Imagine a moment so quiet yet so explosive that almost nobody noticed it. A single procedural vote in the U.S. Senate nearly shifted the balance of power in America. It questioned the president's authority to deploy troops in another country. It exposed fractures in the Republican Party that nobody expected. It created tension in the hallways of Capitol Hill that could be felt by everyone. A single vote became the center of political stormlines. It sparked fear, surprise, and disbelief across party lines. The implications were massive for executive authority and national security. It was a test of loyalty, courage, and constitutional responsibility. History was quietly unfolding in those moments, waiting to be noticed. Washington insiders knew it, the media reported it, but the public barely understood it. This vote involved Venezuela, a country at the center of global political debate, a place whose crisis had long captured American attention and concern. The vote would determine whether Congress could assert authority over military action. The results would show whether principle could override party loyalty. The timing was critical, and every senator's move mattered. The nation watched with bated breath, though few realized what was really at stake. This was not just politics. It was a story of power, pressure, and peril. By the end, the world would see that one vote could make all the difference. Hook ends. Prepare. Clip 1. The vote was not ceremonial and it was not routine. It involved a war powers resolution aimed to limit presidential authority. It did not stop the military from acting, but required congressional approval for new deployments. 5 Republican senators broke ranks with their party to vote with Democrats. Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Josh Hawley, and Todd Young became the center of attention. This kind of rebellion is exceptionally rare in procedural matters. Lawmakers usually address concerns quietly and internally, but the stakes were too high and the visibility too intense to remain silent. The vote's narrow margin highlighted deep divisions in Congress. It reflected concerns over troop deployment in Venezuela without oversight. The political consequences reached far beyond a single procedural vote. Trump monitored every move and understood the significance immediately. Party leaders scrambled to apply pressure, urging defections or reconsideration. Media coverage dissected statements, body language, and the political implications. Public opinion weighed heavily on the senators' minds. Constituents expected accountability and clarity in matters of war. The situation escalated into a tense standoff between principle and loyalty. Each senator's decision carried potential career risks. The vote became a rare moment of constitutional clarity in action. History would remember the courage, the tension, and the uncertainty of this moment. Venezuela had long been a geopolitical flashpoint. Economic collapse, authoritarian leadership, and mass migration dominated headlines. The Trump administration framed the situation as both a moral and strategic emergency. Calls for restoring democracy and countering foreign influence grew louder. Supporters argued intervention would stabilize the region. Critics feared it could repeat past mistakes in Iraq or Afghanistan. The war powers resolution was designed to prevent unilateral military escalation. Lawmakers saw the vote as a chance to assert congressional authority. The stakes were higher than a simple procedural outcome. Every line of debate had consequences for national security. The public, media, and political operatives scrutinized every argument. Even a minor vote gained visibility due to its constitutional significance. Senators faced pressure to weigh both public opinion and party loyalty. Some Republicans were willing to stand for principle over expediency. Others worried about the consequences of breaking party ranks. The political tension was amplified by ongoing conflicts and foreign policy concerns. Washington realized that the vote would have long-term implications. History was quietly unfolding, and the country watched without full awareness. The Senate's decision would send a message far beyond the chamber. The fragility of loyalty was now on public display. Josh Hawley voiced his concerns explicitly before voting. He opposed unauthorized ground troop deployment in Venezuela. Conversations with the administration influenced his final decision. He emphasized that Congress must maintain oversight. This was not merely political posturing, but constitutional principle. Even allies of Trump had to reconsider their positions. Rand Paul and Susan Collins approached the matter with caution. The vote highlighted the tension between executive power and legislative authority. It showcased rare acts of courage coverage by sitting senators. Such votes rarely attract national attention. In this case, every statement carried weight. The media spotlight intensified the pressure on lawmakers. Constituents demanded transparency and accountability. Political analysts dissected motivations, strategies, and implications. The vote quickly became symbolic of broader institutional questions. Checks and balances were being tested in real time. Senators had to navigate competing pressures carefully. The decisions made here would shape future policy debates. Public perception would be influenced by how senators acted. Washington had witnessed an unusual blend of politics and principle. The initial vote passed 52 to 47. The margin highlighted the tension within the Republican Party. All Democrats voted in favor as expected. The 5 Republicans who joined them became instantly controversial. Their names, Rand Paul, Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski, Josh Hawley, Todd Young, made headlines. Crossing party lines on war powers is extremely rare. The vote revealed internal unease about presidential authority. Trump's administration viewed the rebellion as a threat. Immediate pressure attempts were launched to reverse the vote. The president made public statements targeting the dissenters. Warnings about future elections were issued. Criticism extended beyond policy into personal territory. Senators weighed long-term career implications against principle. The narrative of the vote extended beyond legislative mechanics. Party loyalty was tested under public scrutiny. The vote exposed the fragility of Trump's control. It created a precedent for future acts of independence. The public observed a rare moment of political defiance. Analysts debated whether the vote represented a shift in power dynamics. The outcome influenced strategy, messaging, and future legislation. Trump's reaction was immediate and intense. He criticized the 5 Republicans who broke ranks. He suggested they should never be elected again. The warning was both public and strategic. Pressure intensified as the final vote approached. Lawmakers faced heightened scrutiny and lobbying. The stakes had become deeply personal and political. This was not ordinary political maneuvering. The vote had highlighted cracks in party unity. Even short-term rebellion revealed the vulnerability of presidential authority. Media coverage amplified the tension nationwide. Every statement, action, and countermeasure was analyzed. Senators were forced to consider both principle and political survival. Public discourse reflected concerns about unchecked executive power. Observers recognized a rare moment of accountability. The vote demonstrated that constitutional checks still function in practice. Senators had to weigh consequences carefully. Voters began noticing the fragility of political control. The episode signaled potential vulnerability in executive decision-making. Washington understood that a single vote could alter perceptions of power. The final vote resulted in a 50-50 tie. 2 Republicans, Josh Hawley and Todd Young, flipped in favor of Trump. The vice president broke the tie to kill the resolution. Trump technically survived, but the political story was different. A single vote could have permanently limited presidential war powers. The initial 52-47 vote remained on record, a historic act of rebellion. Rand Paul, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski held their ground. They demonstrated the potential to oppose presidential authority publicly. Their positions would influence future policy debates. The precedent showed that breaking with party leadership is survivable. This vote became a powerful symbol for institutional checks. It reflected voters' skepticism of new foreign interventions. The experience of past wars heavily influenced public opinion. Congressional oversight remained a critical concern for constituents. The political consequences would extend to midterms and beyond. Campaign ads, debates, and fundraising efforts would reference the vote. The act of defiance became a narrative tool for opposition parties. The symbolism of a bipartisan challenge resonated nationally. It highlighted the importance of procedural votes beyond the surface. Checks and balances were vividly demonstrated through action. The consequences of this vote extended beyond immediate outcomes. Public trust in institutions remained a central theme. Voters observed checks and balances functioning in real time. The episode highlighted vulnerabilities in presidential authority. It revealed the potential for party fractures to emerge under pressure. Media coverage ensured national awareness of the stakes. The narrow passage illustrated the importance of every senator's vote. Political analysts noted the implications for midterm elections. Campaign messaging would draw on the narrative for months. Procedural votes gained heightened significance in political strategy. Institutional authority was publicly reaffirmed through action. Senators demonstrated both courage and calculated risk-taking. The public witnessed a rare moment of accountability in governance. Constitutional limits on executive power became a central discussion point. The tension between loyalty and principle was vividly illustrated. The episode underscored the importance of legislative oversight. The narrative extended beyond immediate policy into broader politics. Public perception was shaped by both action and rhetoric. Checks and balances were confirmed as active, not theoretical. The story will continue to influence political discourse for years. The narrow vote margins created suspense and uncertainty. Even after surviving the final vote, Trump faced political consequences. The public witnessed a rare instance of accountability in governance. Lawmakers understood the power of principle over loyalty. The episode reinforced the significance of Congress in matters of war. The initial 52-47 procedural vote became a symbol of constitutional oversight. Public opinion strongly favored checks on executive authority. Senators' courage was highlighted in national media. Political messaging referenced the vote for strategy. The story served as a precedent for legislative accountability. Executive overreach was visibly constrained. Observers noted the balance of power in practice. Washington saw the limits of party control. Procedural votes could have far-reaching effects. The narrative would influence elections and campaigns. Media coverage amplified the story nationwide. Political analysts emphasized historical significance. Checks and balances were tangible, not theoretical. The courage of individuals shaped public perception. The episode remains a lesson in principle, power, and political courage. Josh Hawley and Todd Young's final decisions highlighted complex dynamics. Their choice to flip votes underscored the precariousness of political loyalty. The vice president's tiebreaker ultimately killed the resolution. Even with procedural survival, political ramifications remained significant. The initial 52-47 vote stayed on record as a historic act of defiance. 3 Republican senators stood firm despite intense pressure. Rand Paul, Susan Collins, and Lisa Murkowski demonstrated lasting principle. Their resistance created a precedent for future legislative action. Voters observed the potential to challenge executive authority safely. Media coverage amplified the implications for public perception. Political analysts evaluated the impact on party cohesion. The narrow margin highlighted how fragile political control can be. Party loyalty was revealed as negotiable under certain conditions. Public scrutiny ensured accountability remained central to decision-making. The episode emphasized the importance of procedure in governance. Checks and balances functioned visibly and effectively. The outcome illustrated that even procedural votes could be transformational. The political landscape was subtly but meaningfully altered. Future legislative challenges would draw on this precedent. The story showcased courage, principle, and the resilience of institutions. Public perception remained deeply influenced by these votes. The fragility of executive authority was exposed. Party loyalty had limits under constitutional and public pressure. The narrow initial vote and final tie highlighted the precarious balance of power. The actions of 5 Republican senators became the symbol of independence. Checks and balances were enforced through real legislative action. The narrative surrounding Venezuela extended into broader foreign policy discussions. Political analysts noted the implications for midterms and beyond. Future votes on foreign action would be influenced by this precedent. Senators recognized that acting independently could survive scrutiny. Media and public attention ensured transparency in the process. The story became both a cautionary tale and a roadmap for principle. Party leaders recalibrated strategy in light of these events. The president's ability to assert unchecked power was visibly constrained. The narrative highlighted the enduring tension between executive ambition and legislative oversight. Voters became more aware of their representatives' roles. Checks and balances were reinforced as more than theoretical principles. The courage of certain senators set historical precedent. Procedural votes acquired symbolic significance far beyond their immediate purpose. The nation observed a defining example of political principle in action. The narrow vote margins had long-term implications. They reshaped perceptions of party unity and discipline. Public trust in institutions remained central to political discourse. Senators recognized that public opinion could limit executive power. Media coverage amplified the consequences of each decision. Analysts debated whether loyalty or principle would prevail in future crises. The initial procedural vote became a benchmark for political courage. Party leadership evaluated strategies to maintain cohesion. The episode highlighted the importance of precedent in governance. Future legislative actions would consider this example. The narrative reinforced the accountability of lawmakers. Public scrutiny ensured transparency and oversight. The political calculus of rebellion became more nuanced. Senators saw that standing for principle could survive political fallout. The vote illustrated how procedural actions carry symbolic weight. Washington understood the fragility of political alliances. Legislative courage was visibly rewarded by public recognition. Executive authority faced checks through deliberate procedures. The story emphasized the practical enforcement of constitutional limits. Political observers identified the long-term significance of the rebellion. The initial rebellion highlighted internal tensions within the Republican Party. Senators weighing principle versus loyalty faced intense scrutiny. The vote emphasized the power of individual decision-making. Party leadership recognized the importance of maintaining cohesion. Public perception monitored the outcomes of procedural actions closely. Analysts studied the implications for upcoming elections. The procedural vote revealed cracks in traditional power structures. Political messaging would reference this episode repeatedly. The narrative demonstrated how accountability affects executive authority. Voters increasingly understood the role of Congress in oversight. Senators experienced heightened awareness of public opinion. Media coverage amplified the importance of procedural decisions. The symbolic significance extended beyond immediate outcomes. Checks and balances were visually enforced through actions taken. Lawmakers understood that future votes would carry increased attention. The episode created a historical record of political courage. Public scrutiny influenced the perception of both loyalty and principle. Procedural actions were transformed into symbolic statements. Political courage set expectations for future legislative behavior. Institutional checks gained renewed visibility in public discourse. Executive overreach was challenged through these votes. The narrow procedural margin emphasized the fragility of political control. The 50-50 tie underscored the delicate balance between authority and accountability. Senators breaking ranks showcased the power of principle over party discipline. Media narratives amplified the symbolic impact of these actions. Public opinion played a critical role in shaping legislative decisions. Procedural votes gained unprecedented visibility and importance. Observers noted how accountability was enforced practically. Political messaging highlighted the consequences of rebellion. Lawmakers reassessed strategies for maintaining party cohesion. The narrow vote margin became a reference point for future oversight. Checks and balances operated through concrete legislative actions. Political analysts emphasized the historical significance of the vote. Senators recognized that acting independently could survive scrutiny. The episode served as a reminder of constitutional responsibilities. Party loyalty was revealed to have practical limits under pressure. Voters perceived the effectiveness of legislative courage. Media coverage reinforced the narrative of accountability. Future political calculations would consider this precedent. The story illustrated the enduring tension between principle and power. The episode left a lasting impression on the legislative process. Senators understood the weight of public scrutiny. Procedural votes became more than mere formality. The initial rebellion created lasting political precedent. Party leaders recalibrated expectations for future discipline. Executive authority was visibly constrained by legislative action. Observers recognized the importance of accountability and principle. The narrative influenced perceptions of political courage. Voters saw the practical enforcement of checks and balances. Media coverage emphasized the historical significance of these actions. Procedural votes now carried symbolic and practical weight. Senators became aware of the visibility of every decision. The episode reinforced the role of public opinion in governance. Legislative courage gained recognition and influence. Institutional checks were clearly demonstrated to the public. Political messaging incorporated lessons from this vote. Accountability became a central theme in future debates. The narrow vote margin served as a cautionary benchmark. Executive power faced visible, enforceable limitations. The story emphasized the intersection of politics, principle, and governance. The public recognized the stakes involved in procedural votes. Lawmakers' decisions impacted national and foreign policy perceptions. Political observers noted the importance of precedent. Procedural votes influenced party cohesion and strategy. The narrative emphasized accountability for executive actions. Senators breaking ranks created historical examples of courage. The vote became a teaching point in governance and oversight. Public opinion reinforced the importance of checks and balances. Media coverage amplified the consequences of every procedural move. The narrow initial vote highlighted the precariousness of political control. Future legislative actions would reference this precedent. Political messaging and campaigns drew lessons from the episode. Senators saw the practical impact of independent decision-making. Party loyalty was tempered by constitutional responsibilities. Executive authority faced visible and enforceable constraints. The story demonstrated the tangible effects of procedural courage. Observers recognized the significance of standing for principle. Checks and balances gained renewed public visibility. Public engagement in legislative oversight increased. The nation observed a rare convergence of principle, politics, and accountability. The narrow procedural vote became an emblem of legislative independence. The courage of individual senators was widely recognized. Media narratives reinforced the historical significance of their actions. Public perception highlighted the tension between principle and party loyalty. Executive power was visibly challenged and constrained. Political analysts studied the implications for future governance. Procedural votes gained symbolic and practical importance. Senators breaking ranks set precedents for future legislative behavior. The episode underscored the fragility of party cohesion under scrutiny. Public opinion influenced both immediate and long-term political calculations. Accountability and oversight were reinforced through visible action. Party leaders adjusted strategies for maintaining control. Legislative courage became a key factor in political reputation. The story highlighted the balance of power in practice. Checks and balances operated visibly and effectively. Voters perceived the limitations of executive authority. Media coverage amplified the consequences of rebellion. Procedural actions acquired symbolic and historical significance. Future elections and campaigns would reference this precedent. The nation witnessed a defining moment of constitutional accountability. Political courage was demonstrated through procedural action. Senators evaluated the balance between principle and loyalty. Party cohesion was tested under intense scrutiny. Executive authority faced visible constraints due to independent voting. Media narratives reinforced the significance of procedural decisions. Public opinion played a central role in shaping outcomes. Observers recognized the historical impact of rebellion. Legislative precedents were established for future governance. Procedural votes acquired symbolic importance beyond immediate policy. Senators learned the practical value of standing for principle. Party leaders adjusted expectations for discipline and loyalty. Public perception influenced the effectiveness of political action. Checks and balances operated actively, not just theoretically. Accountability was visibly enforced in legislative practice. Political messaging incorporated lessons from this episode. Media coverage amplified awareness and understanding of procedural significance. Future political calculations considered the consequences of independent votes. Legislative courage became a benchmark for evaluating actions. Executive overreach was visibly challenged and constrained. The story emphasized the enduring importance of principle in governance. The long-term effects of the narrow votes extended into national politics. Senators observed the power of independent decision-making. Party cohesion was tested, recalibrated, and redefined. Public opinion influenced both short-term and long-term outcomes. Procedural votes highlighted the importance of checks and balances. Political analysts evaluated the historical significance of actions taken. Media coverage amplified lessons about accountability and principle. Senators recognized the importance of transparency and oversight. The narrative emphasized the tangible impact of courage in legislative practice. Voters observed how constitutional limits were enforced. Executive authority faced visible checks from procedural votes. Procedural outcomes influenced political messaging and campaigns. Legislative courage gained recognition and precedence. Party leaders understood the implications of independent voting. Observers noted the intersection of politics, principle, and governance. Future procedural votes would draw on the precedent set. The story emphasized the balance of power in practice. Media coverage reinforced accountability and transparency. Senators' actions highlighted practical enforcement of constitutional checks. The episode became a landmark in legislative oversight and principle.